So I've started the recording. Basically, in this presentation, short presentation, I'll be talking about evolution and its relation to existence of God. Now, I wanted to do a slightly different topic, but I will spend considerable time on evolution and its relation to theology and existence of God. Right. So before let's get started on this presentation. In this presentation, we will discuss the relationship between theology and evolution. We will look at the common intersection of points, just a few of the common intersection points of theology and evolution. We will also look at the logic behind evolution and intelligent design. And lastly, we will look at some of the justifications for evidence used for evolution and intelligent design, like the common things used as evidence by both evolution and intelligent design. We will spend some time looking on those as well. Let's get started. So, basically, what is evolution and what is intelligent design? What's the journal claim? People arguing for life being designed, whether it's the ID movement or some other form of design belief or claim, they will generally claim that life was created by an intelligent creator and that life shows evidence of being created by an intelligent creator, and that life would have been unlikely without an intelligent mind behind life, either unlikely or impossible. People arguing for evolution believe that life is a result of unguided processes, just blind, unguided processes. This does not mean random. This just means blind, unguided, although they do believe these processes are random, but you can have random processes with design as well. People in general arguing for evolution believe that life is a result of processes that are undirected, that are not due to an intelligent mind, and they also believe that life could have easily emerged as a result of unguided processes. So these are the general beliefs of evolutionists and ID proponents or intelligent design of different types. First thing I want to go into, and this is something that's very important, that's extremely neglected in a sense, and in a sense, it's just it's overused by atheists and wrongly used by atheists and evolutionists, and that's the role of physical processes. Physical processes are generally just natural physical processes that are happening. For instance, when a mother has a child, right, the she naturally develops milk. That's due to a physical process. There is a mechanism behind it. In cases where there's a physical mechanism, that's what I'm calling a physical process. Here's a simple fact: physical processes are clearly responsible for at least some of the things about life. But this is something everyone can agree on. Even if you believe life is created or you believe life is not created, you can agree that physical processes are clearly responsible for at least some of the things about life. And they certainly can explain many things regarding life. This is a fact, this is uncontroversial. Now I'll get into something controversial. A common assumption from evolutionists seems to be that this supports evolution, just the fact that there are physical processes involved, that supports evolution and refutes design. What they generally do is they will look at, for instance, a certain physical process happens, right? A certain genetic process that explains some of our behavior. The fact that that physical process is there, that supposedly refutes design. This claim is nonsense. Now, what is the logic behind the evolutionist claim? They are basically trying to refute a version of God of the gaps. What they are saying is, because we have a physical process, we don't need God to explain this, and therefore God did not do this or wouldn't do this. This claim is nonsensical, and I'll just give a simple example why. Suppose I am to bake a cake, right? By the way, can you guys hear me clearly? Right? You can hear my voice, right? Can just someone say in the comments, can you hear me clearly or not? Okay, so I'll continue. Here is why the claim regarding physical processes supposedly refuting design is garbage. And I think it is garbage, and I think you can easily see why. Suppose I bake a cake. I clearly will take some physical actions and engage in some physical processes regarding making that cake. But just because those physical processes are responsible for the cake, right, or are involved in formation of the cake, does that mean that there was no mind behind the cake? Of course not. I was the mind behind the cake. I made the cake, right? So just because physical processes are present, that does absolutely nothing to refute design. And the fallacy, like invoking God of the gaps in this case, either from the theist side or the atheist side, does not make sense. We can see physical processes happen, they happen all the time. But just because physical processes are happening, that does not mean life is not designed. This is the first thing to keep in mind. Another extremely important thing to keep in mind is regarding what is science and falsification. What do I mean by this? Here's what I mean. A very common talking point from evolutionists is that evolution is science, and that's why it should be taken seriously, whereas design is not science and therefore should be rejected. Firstly, there's a form of scientism here which is it's not science, it's just a garbage philosophy, so no one should take it seriously. But let's ignore that for a minute. There's a massive problem other than that here. How do we know what is science, what is not science? A very common way to know this, and something a lot of atheists and evolutionists will themselves claim, is the way to know what science is falsification. Meaning, you can test a particular theory or hypothesis and it could be in principle falsified, meaning some sort of evidence could come up that could render that particular theory or hypothesis to be false. This is what falsification means. Here is the problem for evolutionists, and this is something I think you will know. I'm from Rawalpindi, Pakistan, not Bihar. Here is the problem for evolutionists, and it's actually quite a simple one. Let's suppose evolution is falsified, right? What would be true? And a very specific claim is falsified. Suppose the claim that life is a result of unguided blind processes. Suppose that is falsified. What would be true? Life being designed, right? And the only way to prove the claim that life is a result of unguided process would be to falsify design. To prove one of these two, evolution or intelligent design, you have to falsify the other. There is no way around this simple fact. Either both of these are falsifiable or none of these are falsifiable. So I think you can easily see, and I don't think it's difficult to see, that this very common talking point from evolutionists has been debunked. There's simply no way around this because either evolution is falsifiable, and if it's falsifiable, intelligent design can be science. But if it's not if intelligent design is not science, then evolution is not falsifiable, and if it's not falsifiable, it's not science. So this claim is dead. I think Cypher is saying that no one says that evolution disproves God. I agree, but that has nothing to do with what I'm arguing here. That has literally nothing to do with what I'm arguing here because you can have evolution and you can have God. There is no incompatibility between the two. I agree with this. The problem, what I think is the problem, is that the evidence for evolution is generally garbage. And to be honest, it fails according to the criteria atheists and evolutionists themselves use. And I'll get into this soon, inshallah. So that's basically the point regarding falsifiability is done. Now I'll move into Occam's razor. This is basically a principle that's used in philosophy and science, which states that the simplest explanation is the correct one. One of the ways this is interpreted by both atheists and evolutionists and even theists is that the explanation that explains the most data by itself without invoking other explanation is the simplest one and it should be preferred. I'll just mention how this is applied in case of evolution. That will help you understand this point better. So here's a common way to argue from atheists and evolutionists. Blind physical processes can explain at least some things regarding life. If someone is invoking intelligent design as another explanation of life, they are bringing in an extra explanation regarding life. Because they are bringing in multiple explanations, they have burden of proof, and Occam's razor suggests we should take the simplest explanation, namely that life is a result of unguided physical processes. Right? This is a very common talking point, and this is generally how Occam's razor is used by atheists uh, and evolutionists. That why do we need to invoke God? This is a common talking point from them. That we don't need to invoke God, we can explain life without God. So, this is Cypher. I'll get into your questions. I will have some time for Q&A after I finish my presentation, and you can respond. You can ask your questions then, and maybe later we can even have a debate on this topic. Now, I've explained what Occam's razor is and how it's applied to evolution, right? I will get into a very specific problem that evolutionists face in regards to Occam's razor. Some of the most common arguments for evolution are based on similarities of living things. For instance, the similarities between humans and chimps, or similarities between different types of mammals, etc. Uh, right now, someone just commented microevolution or macroevolution. That discussion is irrelevant right now. Here's a simple point that needs to be considered. One of the most common arguments is that the similarities are due to evolution, to common descent, which is required for evolution, and at least to an extent, common descent is required for evolution, even if you don't have universal common ancestry. And the claim is these similarities are evidence of common descent. But this actually violates Occam's razor. I'll explain why. According to both atheists and theists, evolutionists and ID proponents, there are an absolutely massive amount of similarities among living things, right? And these are supposedly evidence of evolution. But there are also an absolutely massive amount of similarities in living things that cannot possibly be due to evolution or due to common descent. These are called convergent evolution or homoplasy. If common descent is used as an explanation for one set of similarities, then you would have to invoke another explanation for all the similarities that are not due to common descent. Common design is simpler than common descent. Why? Because it can explain both the similarities that are due to common descent and similarities supposedly due to common descent and similarities that cannot possibly be due to common descent. Therefore, common design is simpler than common descent, and if Occam's razor is used as justification, then a rational person would have to accept common design as an explanation for all these similarities, just using Occam's razor. So this is a simple and massive problem for atheists and evolutionists and or evolutionists because they are theistic evolutionists as well, who appeal to similarities of living things as evidence. Now I want to go into another important justification of beliefs and arguments used in this debate, and that is intuition. And intuition is just an instinctive feeling we have. Uh, for instance, just to give an example, parts of something cannot be greater than a whole. This is just an intuition we have. This is just a feeling we have. Uh, there are other examples of this. For instance, a good God would not create a world with evil and suffering. This is an intuition, or with unnecessary evil and suffering. This is also an intuition. This is an instinctive feeling we have. You cannot prove this, you cannot disprove this. This is just a feeling we have. Are intuitions evidence? And this is something both sides of the debate need to consider. Why? Because design is intuitive. There are psychological studies that also state this, but even most evolutionary biologists who don't believe in life being designed, they will admit that design is intuitive. For instance, Richard Dawkins calls life or biology the study of things that look designed. Why is he saying this? Because these things look designed. Even if he believes these things are not designed, but they look designed, meaning that you have an intuition when looking at them that design is intuitive. If intuitions are evidence, then this needs to be taken seriously. Now, atheists can say, or evolutionary biologists can say, evolutionists can say that intuitions are not evidence. Okay, I actually agree with this. Like, I can agree with this in principle. Here is the problem for atheists and or evolutionists. Almost all of the bad design arguments are based on intuitions. Junk DNA and vestigial organs arguments are based on intuitions that a good, intelligent creator would not create a purposeless thing. That is an intuition. All of the bad design arguments, many of them are based on problem of evil. They are based on intuitions. Are intuitions evidence? If you say intuitions are not evidence, all of these arguments are garbage. You have to admit this. Either take intuitions as evidence or don't take them as evidence, but have a consistent standard. Now, so this is basically something that we can get into question and answers, or another debate in this regard, because this is a very important topic. Now I want to talk about one of the most common arguments for evolution and basically display the garbage logic behind it. These are the junk DNA and vestigial organs arguments, and I will show here how atheists themselves used god of the gaps type of argumentation. So these junk DNA is basically, supposedly, these are sequences of DNA in animals and living things that were thought to be useless. That's not the case anymore because we have discovered function for a lot of these things. Vestigial organs are organs in our bodies that were thought to be useless. For almost all of these, we have discovered function. The claim was that, here was the argument from atheists and evolutionists. These things are functionless. An intelligent creator would not create a functionless thing. Therefore, these are not designed. They are due to blind random processes. Firstly, again, keep this in mind. Are intuitions evidence or are they not evidence? If they are not, this argument, it gets flushed. Simple as that. Now, let's suppose for a moment they are evidence. Even then, this argument is garbage. There's a simple reason for this. Here's the thing. If someone creates a simple object that does not change over time, such as a lamp or a table, and it has something functionless, you can have this intuition there. But humans and animals and living things are not like that. They are like a building, in that parts of it get changed over time, part of it lose function over time and gain other functions over time. For instance, suppose there is a building, right? It has 10 floors, each of them has 10 rooms, offices. Nine of the, for some reason, one of the offices, it's no longer used after 10 years. The person whose office it was died suddenly and he wasn't replaced. So this is a useless thing in a building. That office is a useless thing in a building. Just because there is something that has no function anymore, does that mean the building was not designed? Does that mean the building emerged due to blind random processes? No. This is just garbage logic. In fact, humans beings are like, and animals and living things are like buildings in this regard. For instance, the room in the building, for instance, it was useless for a while, it gains another function, another person takes that office. The same thing happens with junk DNA and vestigial organs. An organ is performing another function previously, supposedly, later on it gains another function. This is what happens. This is uncontroversial. Therefore, this argument is garbage. Its logic is garbage just by a simple inference and comparison to a building. Lastly, I want to show how this very common argument uses God of the gaps logic. Here's the God of the gaps logic. There's a certain phenomena that's happening, for instance, thunder. We don't know the physical process behind it. Therefore, there was no physical process behind it. God did it. Therefore, God did it. Now, let's compare this to vestigial organs and junk DNA. Here's a sequence of DNA or an organ. We don't know the function for it. Therefore, it has no function. Therefore, it was not designed. The same garbage logic that is involved in God of the gaps is being used by atheists and evolutionists and has been used for 150 years. These are garbage arguments. This is one of the most common arguments for evolution, and its logic is pure garbage, and even the science behind it is garbage as well, because junk DNA, we have discovered function for a lot of it. For vestigial organs, we have discovered function for a lot of it. So these are garbage arguments, and these are some of the most common arguments for evolution. So I think this I don't think I've given everything, I have not mentioned everything I have to say on this topic because this is a short time. But I think I've made some sufficient and interesting points. And I'll just end this in a moment. Before I do, uh, I've actually published a book on the existence of God. In that book, I have basically used the arguments I've given here, for instance, Occam's razor and intuition, and applied it to some of the most common arguments for God. If you are interested in this line of argumentation and if you are interested in this work, you can support me by buying the book. And if anyone here is interested, I would be happy to give them a discount. Now, I'll end this presentation. Now we can start. Maybe Infiras or someone else can come up on stage as well, and we can have some sort of Q&A or a few questions. Like my presentation is over, but we can have a Q&A, a few questions. Infres, maybe you can come up or someone else can come up. Uh, we can either do a Q&A now. Actually, I prefer we do a Q&A now, or if Cypher or anyone else is interested, I can come back next week and we can also do a debate. But I would prefer we do a short Q&A right now. Infres can come up again and he can moderate or some sort, or Cypher can come up and ask some questions. I don't have an issue either way.
Oh, hell yeah, I'm on stage now. Let's go.
Right now you can ask 1 or 2 questions.
Okay, so I just wanted to say evolution has nothing to say about God or like if life was designed by a god. First, can you tell me what you think the definition of evolution is? Like, give me like a basic undergrad textbook definition.
Firstly, I agree with the first point. I said it in the debate myself that evolution does not have to be incompatible with God. Secondly, there are many different definitions.
It's incompatible with some God concepts.
Cypher, let me finish this point.
Like the ones who think God made humans out of dirt separated from all animals. That one evolution is against. But it's not against all God concepts.
Can you refute that? Like, can you specifically give an argument for that is not based on intuitions or Occam's razor? Because to be honest, you cannot use these things. Now, just
an argument against what?
An argument for that, basically, that humans share common ancestry. Can you give an argument that's not based on Occam's razor, or can you at least address my argument for why similarities due to common
post-zygotic isolation. In the 1970s, James Bedford performed an experiment with taking the eggs of 5 different primates: baboons, squirrel monkeys, rhesus monkeys, gorillas, and not bonobos, gibbons. He took the sperm from a human and saw how it interacted with the eggs of those. With the 3 monkeys in the experiment, the rhesus monkeys, squirrel monkeys, and baboons, we saw pre-zygotic isolation. The sperm and eggs weren't interested in each other. The sperm wasn't trying to break through the membrane of the egg to get to the ovum. However, with the 2 apes in the experiment, which we know we are more closely related to the other apes than we are to other primates, we experienced post-zygotic inability. I forgot the word at the top of my head. It's a type of post-zygotic isolation where the sperm and egg were interested in each other. They did fertilize it, but they didn't make a viable offspring. This is similar to what horses and donkeys do, which we know horses and donkeys are closer in relation than we are to the apes. They experienced a higher version of post-zygotic isolation where they can have sterile offspring. They can have viable offspring, but it's sterile and can't have its own children.
Okay, Cypher, you made your argument. Now let me respond without interruption and then address what I said.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So all this shows that there is compatibility or similarities between humans and chimps. I agree there is compatibility and similarity.
I didn't say chimps. I said gibbons and gorillas.
I'm sorry. Which two animals? Which they're like? You mentioned two animals
Gibbons,
that their sperms were somewhat compatible. You mentioned two specific animals, right? Their sperm was somewhat compatible.
Yes, gibbons and gorillas.
Okay. Let's go with this for now. Now let me make my argument.
Yes.
These two are compatible or similar. Let's agree on this. This is just a fact. This is an observation. Your claim that this follows, like it follows from this that there is common descent, it's garbage. There's a simple reason for that. Your claim is that these similarities or compatibilities are due to common descent. But I've given a simple argument why using Occam's razor, which something the entire case for evolution depends on, shows that common design is a simpler explanation than common descent. Now you need to respond to that.
Yeah, but there's no evidence for common design, but there's evidence for common descent. For example, if I said that we were created by the flying spaghetti monster, that's a simpler argument. There's no evidence for it.
What do you mean evidence here? Here's the problem for you. Let me respond. Let me finish the simple point regarding evidence and then you can respond. Your claim is these similarities, these particular similarities are evidence for something. This is how science works. It takes a fact and then gives an explanation for it.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
No, the method of science. The scientific method is first
Cypher,
you ask the question, then you
we can interrupt each other again and again.
What you're doing
and
is deductive reasoning. What science uses.
This is how science works, Cypher. We can interrupt each other again and again, and this entire discussion will be a waste of time. Right? Let me finish my point, then you can respond. I won't interrupt you like I did not interrupt you last time. Let me finish my point, then you can respond. Here's how science works. It takes a fact, for instance, the similarities of living things, and it gives an explanation for it. The claim is these similarities among living things that are present throughout life, and the best explanation for these is common descent because these are unlikely given chance. This is the argument. But here's the problem for atheists. When we look at the evidence explanation of this fact using Occam's razor, which, let's not forget, the entire case for evolution depends on Occam's razor. That Occam's razor states that common design is simpler than common descent. This argument, now you can believe it or not, but using the same criteria that atheists and evolutionists themselves use, your argument here is garbage. You can respond.
Oh, wait, so really all I heard, because I was also reading the comments, were Occam's razor. Also, you said that a common design is more... I'm sorry, repeat what you said. I am so sorry, I was not paying attention. I'll pay attention.
Okay, here's what I said, and to be honest, after this time, I won't repeat myself on this. Your claim is that...
I'm sorry, that was my fault.
Your claim is that these compatibilities or similarities are due to common descent. Science takes a fact such as similarities of living things and gives an explanation for that. Yeah. The case for evolution depends on Occam's razor. I am using Occam's razor. I am giving a simple argument from Occam's razor to show that common design is a simpler explanation than common descent. Now, not only did I give this argument here in our discussion, I gave this in the presentation as well, so I'm pretty sure that you know what my argument is. I would like you to respond to that argument.
So you said two things. I wrote them down. Science starts with a fact. No, it doesn't. It starts with an observation. Then you ask a question. Then you make a hypothesis. Then you test for this hypothesis. If you get results that back it up, awesome. This hypothesis probably has some warrant to it. You should probably invest it some more. If the test does not support the hypothesis, you can see what mistakes did I make and how can I better test my experiment. So no, science does not start with facts. You're using deductive reasoning. Science uses inductive reasoning. And the second thing you said is that science uses Occam's razor and common design is simpler. I would agree. If I said that the flying spaghetti monster or Richard Nixon created human life, that is more simple than evolution, as an example. Evolution being a change of allele frequencies throughout multiple populations due to the non-random selection of random mutations. That is the textbook definition of evolution. That's more complicated than saying Richard Nixon created human life. There's no evidence for that, though. So why would we take it even though it is simpler?
Okay, I'll respond now. Firstly, he said that science is based on facts, not observation.
Richard Nixon created me. That's hilarious. I'm sorry, you keep going.
Okay. So he said that science is based on facts, not observation, but whether you call it a fact...
No, I didn't say it's created. I didn't say it's... I said it's based on... I basically explained the
yes,
scientific
you literally
method,
said,
but I didn't
you
say...
said that it's not based on facts, it's taking a fact. You said it's taking an observation. This discussion is recorded. You literally said this. You literally said
this. Well, I
this.
explained the scientific method, and yes, it does start with an observation.
Then why are you interrupting me? Like, we agree on this point and you are still correcting me on
sorry.
the same thing you are saying.
I thought you just said that I said it starts with facts. You keep going.
If you interrupt again, like, someone can just move you down, some moderator or something.
Sure.
He said, Cypher said that science is based on taking an observation. Whether you call the similarities of living things facts or observation, they are still both things. It's still an observation that there are similarities among living things, and it's also a fact that there are similarities among living things. Now, what science does, it gives an explanation for those facts. This is how the argument for common descent is literally made. It's an inference to the best explanation. The claim is that these similarities are unlikely to happen due to chance. This is a claim, this is a talking point again and again from evolutionary biologists. And that common descent is a simpler explanation than, as a better explanation than chance, because it cannot happen due to chance. I am saying, using the same criteria atheists themselves use, that common design is a better explanation than common descent. So you haven't addressed this point, you haven't addressed the reasoning behind why common design is simpler than common descent. The point you made was that, for instance, Richard Nixon or flying spaghetti monster creating life is simpler than evolution, right? In this, you are bringing a secondary thing, basically the identity of the creator. In our entire discussion so far, I have not made a point about who that creator is. I am just looking at the evidence and what it suggests regarding whether life is due to blind, unguided processes or due to design. In that case, well, the simplest explanation clearly is design. So your claim in this regard is basically garbage. Now, with regards to the identity of the creator, that cannot be proven through science. I don't think you can prove the identity of the creator through science. I think science can just tell us whether life is designed or not designed. As for the identity of the creator, I have other arguments, independent arguments, for that creator being God. Now, we can have a debate on this topic next week because that's a broader discussion than just what we are having right now. But till then, at least we can agree on one thing, that common design is a simpler explanation than common descent. I think like these questions are enough for today. So I'll be ending my presentation. Cypher, if you want to debate this topic, I'm only free on Sundays. Talk with Infras and we can set up a debate for next week, inshallah.
Sure. I just wrote down like 8